There are wounds that do not bleed, but hurt more than any blow. Because when someone manipulates you, underestimates you, or plays with you emotionally, they do not break you on the outside. They disarm you on the inside. And that doesn't show. No one sees the exact moment when you stopped being you to become what the other person wanted. No one sees how your voice became lower, how your decisions began to depend on someone else, how your dignity was silently worn away. The worst part of an unbalanced relationship is not that you have been hurt, it is that, without realizing it, you began to think that you deserved it. And that is truly dangerous. Because when you get used to being disrespected, you start to forget what it feels like to have power, your own power, the one that doesn't need to shout, beg, or justify anything. But let me tell you something clearly, you can recover. Not only can you must do it. Because this is not about healing with self-love, as if it were an empty slogan. It's about rebuilding yourself with strength, with character, and with a clearer vision of who you are and what you will never allow again. Today, we are not going to talk about revenge. We are going to talk about power, yours. And for that, you need to turn off the noise, cut off access, disappear with elegance, and grow again where no one sees it coming. This is for the one who is tired of pretending they are okay, for the one who no longer wants explanations or empty apologies. This is for the one who is ready to stop crawling and start walking upright again. This is for you. One, turn off the echo. After an unbalanced relationship, what makes the most noise is not the other person. It's the echo they left in your mind. That repetitive, insistent voice that makes you doubt, that relives scenes, that rewrites what happened with excuses, that convinces you that maybe it wasn't that bad, or that you were also to blame. That echo is not the other person speaking. It's you repeating what they made you believe. And there lies the real poison. In the constant thought, in the memory that triggers itself, in the damned habit of analyzing every gesture, every word, as if finding an explanation would bring you peace. But no, the echo does not give you peace. The echo keeps you tied. From Stoic philosophy, Epictetus would make it clear, it's not the things that affect us, but the opinion we have of them. And that echo is exactly that. A toxic opinion that has been recorded and that you continue to feed every time you mentally return to what you experienced. It's time to turn it off. How do you turn off an echo? You can't force the mind to be quiet, but you can re-educate it. It's a matter of daily decision. Every time the thought comes back, because it will come back, don't follow it. Don't engage in conversation with it. Don't argue it. Don't analyze it, just recognize it and let it pass. It's a brutal training, yes, but necessary. Psychology calls it rumination, and it's one of the worst mental habits after a toxic breakup. The brain becomes addicted to the repetition of painful scenes because it believes that by reliving them, it will find control. But that's a lie. It's only hurting itself. So the first step is to decide that you are not going to continue collaborating with your own emotional sabotage. Every time that echo comes back, remind yourself of this. Thinking about it is not going to change it, but it is holding you back. And what you deserve now is not an explanation, it's recovery. Turning off the echo also means taking control of your environment. Eliminate songs, places, objects, conversations that reactivate it. This is not weakness, this is strategy. You're not running away, you're clearing the ground to be able to rebuild yourself without emotional interruptions. And yes, it's going to hurt, because the silence after the echo may seem empty. But in reality, it's space. Space for you to listen to yourself again. Because while the echo is active, your voice is drowned out. And there's nothing sadder than a person who can't listen to themselves because they're still listening to someone else's ghost. Stoicism doesn't tell you not to feel. It tells you not to enslave yourself to what you can't control. And the past is just that, uncontrollable. What you can master is your present. It's the only real thing, the only thing that's still in your hands. So today, even if it's just for a moment, turn off the echo. Sit in silence, close your eyes, and every time that intrusive thought comes, respond with internal firmness. This no longer belongs to me. You're going to have to repeat it many times. But there will come a day when you don't have to say anything, because the echo will be gone. And there, in that new silence, you're going to start feeling something that seemed lost. Power. 2. Make your presence inaccessible. One of the most common mistakes after an unbalanced relationship is to remain available. Not physically, necessarily, but emotionally and symbolically. Your presence continues to float in the air, available on social networks, in unerased messages, in the way the other person knows they can knock on a door, and you will open it, even if it's just to look. And that, although it may seem harmless, is one of the most silent ways of surrendering your power. Make your presence inaccessible, not to punish, but to protect. Not out of pride, but out of respect for yourself. Stoicism does not speak of disappearing as an act of rebellion, but as a decision of self-control. When someone has underestimated or manipulated you, the strongest thing you can do is not to shout your value. It's to withdraw it. And this is where the real challenge comes in. Because withdrawing is not impulsively blocking. It's walking away with intention. It's closing accesses, cutting bridges, turning off signals, not to create drama, but to recover mental space. We must understand that the real power is not in showing off, but in knowing when and why to stop doing so. When your presence is accessible, so is your energy. Every little interaction, every response, every story you post so they see how well you're doing, is a reminder that you're still there. And as long as you're there, even if it's in the form of a shadow, you're not freeing yourself, you're just stretching the suffering. From a psychological perspective, this is understood as intermittent reinforcement. Every so often, the other person throws a message, a signal, an ambiguous gesture. And if you respond, even once, you're teaching that there's still access. And that's exactly what shouldn't happen if you want to rebuild yourself firmly. Becoming inaccessible does not mean disappearing from the world. It means making that part of you that was used, manipulated, or underestimated inaccessible. You don't have to stop existing. You have to stop being available for those who no longer deserve access to your energy. And that is done silently, firmly, without speeches, without warnings. Simply, you are and you stop being. In Stoic practice, it's about distinguishing what is in your control from what is not. You can't control if the other person remembers you, mentions you, or tries to find you, but you can control if you open the door. And that's the key. Every time the past knocks, you have the opportunity not to respond, to show yourself not with words, but with absence. Because there's a type of presence that weighs more than any silence. The memory of someone who is no longer available. That's the most elegant way to regain power, when your absence makes your value clearer than your constant presence. When you're no longer there to defend yourself or to give explanations, because you've simply stopped allowing yourself to be within reach of those who didn't know how to take care of you. Becoming inaccessible is also an act of self-knowledge. It means that you no longer need the validation of the other to feel important, that you're not looking to close cycles through a pending conversation, nor waiting for a closure that's not going to come. You've decided to close without permission, without external consent, because your life is not on pause. Your life goes on with or without apologies, with or without beautiful endings. So make yourself inaccessible. Let your energy not be available for anyone's emotional entertainment. Let your presence feel like something valuable because it's no longer given away. And that when someone thinks of you, they realize that they can no longer find you in the same place where they lost you. 3. Break the habit of explaining yourself. One of the most invisible but most destructive aftermaths of an unbalanced relationship is the constant need to justify oneself. You explain what you feel, what you think, why you walked away, why you reacted that way, why you don't respond, why you're no longer there. And every time you do, even though you think you're clarifying things, what you're really doing is giving up power. Breaking the habit of explaining yourself is not becoming cold, it's reclaiming your center. Because when you explain yourself over and over, you're acting from a place of insecurity. You seek the other person to understand, accept, or at least respect your decisions. But if that person has already manipulated you, underestimated you, or played with you emotionally, do you really think an explanation is going to change anything? The problem is not that you speak, it's where you speak from. When you speak from the need to justify yourself, you're assuming that you have to convince the other that you have the right to feel or act as you do. And it's not like that. No one has the right to ask you for explanations for protecting your mental peace. No one deserves an argument for crossing boundaries they should never have crossed. Stoic philosophy reminds us that we should act according to reason, but without depending on external approval. Seneca would say, "To him who does not want to listen, one should not speak." And that applies here. Explaining yourself to someone who has no intention of understanding you is like throwing your dignity into the void. It's not coming back. From a psychological perspective, this is related to the trauma of invalidation. When you've been in a relationship where your voice was ignored or constantly minimized, you develop a compulsive need to explain yourself to feel valid. It's as if only by justifying your decisions, you could feel that they make sense. But it's not true. Your life makes sense because you decide it does. Your boundaries are valid even if someone doesn't like them. Your voice matters even when no one approves of it. Breaking this habit also means accepting that not everyone deserves a version of you that strives to be understood. You don't have to detail your process. You don't have to clarify your reasons. You don't have to soften your words so that someone doesn't feel uncomfortable. And the hardest part, you don't have to convince anyone that it was necessary to walk away. This doesn't mean being abrupt with those who do value you. It means you stop wearing yourself out trying to explain yourself to those who didn't listen when you needed them to. If they didn't understand your pain at the time, they don't have the right to your explanation now. In everyday life, this is trained with small decisions, leaving a message that only seeks to provoke you on read, not responding to veiled digs disguised as concern, stop writing long texts justifying why you're taking distance. Keeping silent sometimes is the most powerful response, because the one who knows who they are doesn't need to defend it all the time. The person who regains their power is not the one who speaks louder. It's the one who no longer feels the need to speak where there is no listening. It's the one who recognizes that their time, their story, and their process are not debate material for anyone. So from now on, every time you feel the need to explain yourself, stop. Ask yourself if you're speaking from your strength or from your wound. And if it's from the wound, keep silent. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you know you no longer need to say it. That is true power, the one that doesn't justify itself. 4. Close the scene without an ending. Not all stories need a perfect ending to close. Sometimes the scene just ends, without explanations, without applause, without reconciliations. Just silence, just emptiness. Just you, leaving the stage as the curtain falls abruptly. And although at first this may feel like an injustice, it is actually an act of power. Because waiting for an ending that never comes is a silent way of remaining tied. And you are not here to keep waiting. You are here to end what is holding you back. After an unbalanced relationship, the need for closure is an emotional trap. You want the other person to understand what they did, to apologize to you, to acknowledge your pain. You want one last honest conversation, a gesture of humanity, something that makes sense of all the suffering you went through. But that rarely comes. And if it does, it is often too late, manipulated, or empty. So, how long are you going to keep waiting for someone to give you the peace that you can give yourself? Closing the scene without an ending does not mean denying what happened. It means to stop putting your healing in the hands of the one who broke it. Stoicism makes it clear you cannot control the actions of others, but you can control your response. And your response can be this: to end without permission, to let go without an answer, to move forward without explanation. Psychology talks about ambiguous grief, when something ends without clear closure. It's uncomfortable, yes, because your mind seeks a complete story, something that has a beginning, development, and end. But in real life, you often only have chaos, rupture, and a silence that resolves nothing. And there, in the midst of that discomfort, is where your power appears, in accepting that you don't need that ending to move on. People often think they need to understand everything to let it go, but that's not the case. You don't need to understand why someone was cruel to you. You don't need to understand how they could lie, manipulate, leave, or stay when they were causing the most harm. You don't need to understand anything. You just need to assume that you don't want to live a life trapped in an unfinished scene. And here comes the Stoic within you, the one who doesn't negotiate with what he can't change, the one who doesn't expect emotional justice, the one who decides with full consciousness that he is not going to stay frozen in a story that no longer belongs to him. The one who understands that closing a scene doesn't require drama, just decision. Closing without an ending also implies giving up your role. Because sometimes what hurts you the most is not that the other person didn't say anything, it's that you keep waiting for your turn to say something more. But your role is over, your dialogue is over. The story no longer needs you. The only thing left is for you to let go of the script. In practice, this translates into stopping looking for signs, stopping rereading conversations, stopping imagining scenarios where everything becomes clear, accepting that silence is your closure, that emptiness is enough, that you can put the final period even if the other never wrote their part. So close the scene. Without background music, without applause, without answers. Do it for yourself, because waiting for an ending keeps you trapped in the same act over and over again, and you deserve more than that. You deserve a new story, one where the protagonist is no longer seeking justice, but freedom. 5. Don't feed their curiosity. When you distance yourself from someone who underestimated, manipulated, or emotionally drained you, something often gets activated on the other side. Curiosity. Not because that person sincerely misses you, but because they have lost control over you. And that bothers them. It intrigues them. They want to know what you're doing, if you've changed, if you're better, if you're still thinking about them. And if you're not careful, you can fall into the game of feeding that curiosity without realizing it. You do it when you post a picture for them to see, when you share a veiled hint of overcoming, when you keep a channel open just in case, when you respond coldly just to make it clear that it no longer affects you. But if you're doing all this for them to notice, then it still affects you. And what you're doing, unknowingly, is giving them emotional nourishment. Not feeding their curiosity is cutting off the supply of attention that person used to receive from you. It's about becoming unpredictable. It's about becoming inaccessible, not only in presence, but in narrative. You don't give information. You don't give signals, you don't give clues. Your life is no longer a public stage. Your process is no longer on offer. Your energy is no longer available to anyone who just wants to know if they still have it. From Stoicism, this principle is based on strategic indifference. Marcus Aurelius said we should act as if we were observing from above, with perspective, with control, without being dragged by impulses. That means you don't have to prove anything. Neither that you're okay, nor that you've changed, nor that it no longer hurts. The important thing is not what the other person thinks of you. The important thing is what you are building, even if no one sees it. Psychology also supports this attitude. When someone has exerted power over you, part of that dynamic continues if you keep offering updates about your life, even if you don't give them directly. Any form of emotional exposure can be perceived as a door left ajar, and a manipulative mind only needs a crack to get back in. That's why it's so important to protect your emotional privacy. It's not about hiding, it's about reserving yourself. Stop living your recovery as an external demonstration. You don't have to prove anything, neither that you've healed, nor that you're strong, nor that it no longer hurts. You're in process, and that process doesn't need witnesses, it needs commitment. Not feeding their curiosity also implies accepting that not everyone deserves to know what you've become. There are people who are not interested in your growth, but in comparing it to what you were when they had you within their reach. They want to confirm if they can still influence you, if they can still provoke you, if they can still interrupt your peace, and you decide if you allow it. In everyday life, this is practiced with small acts. Stop looking at who sees your stories. Stop checking if someone reacted to what you posted. Stop sending signals disguised as indifference, because true indifference is not published. It's practiced, and it's not about ignoring with anger, but about not needing to be seen by someone who no longer valued you. So, if you're on this recovery path, remember this: you have nothing to prove, and whoever is curious about your life, let them stay with the questions. Your silence, your absence, and your transformation spoken in actions are already sufficient answers. There's no better message than not sending any. 6. Be invisible to those who no longer matter. Being invisible is not always synonymous with weakness. Sometimes it's the most powerful act of self-control. After an unbalanced relationship, many people feel the need to somehow remain present. Even though they're gone, they still want to be seen, recognized, remembered, but that's not freedom. It's emotional dependency disguised as pride. And if you really want to reclaim your power, you have to dare to disappear. Not as punishment, but as protection. Not from hate, but from clarity. Be invisible to those who no longer matter. You don't owe your presence to anyone who played with it. You don't have to remain available, not even in the form of an active memory. Because as long as you keep trying to prove that you've changed, that you've overcome, that it no longer affects you, you're still revolving around that same energy. And what doesn't let you go is also because you haven't fully let it go. The invisibility we're talking about here is not escape or cowardly silence. It's emotional strategy. It's choosing not to be part of the universe of someone who let you down. It's refusing to be part of the emotional scenery of someone who underestimated you, and you don't need to do it with shouts or innuendos. It's enough to be absent, to not respond, to not look, to leave no trace. Your absence is your statement. From Stoicism, rational detachment is promoted. Epictetus said, "Nothing that does not depend on you can touch your soul." And this includes people who once held an important place and no longer deserve it. What hurts is not leaving. What hurts is to keep waiting to be seen by someone who no longer has the right to look. Psychologically, this decision implies breaking the emotional dependency bond. When you stop seeking contact, you stop validating yourself through the eyes of that person. You regain your internal autonomy. And that hurts at first, because you're used to receiving small doses of attention, even if they're empty. But every time you accept one of those crumbs, you reinforce the idea that your value depends on others. And that's not the case. Being invisible is also to stop playing the role they imposed on you. Maybe you were the one who was always there, the one who always forgave, the person who never said no. Breaking with that implies to stop acting for the other person. There's no stage anymore. There's no audience. Just you doing what you need, even if no one sees it, even if no one recognizes it. In real life, this is reflected in not seeking unnecessary presence, not asking about that person, not checking what they post, not telling your process to people close to her, not leaving traces of your evolution in the hope that they notice. Because if someone didn't value you when they had you, they won't do it now because you seem stronger. And if they do, it will be from the ego, not from regret. Invisibility is not coldness. It's a way of healing without interruptions. It's allowing yourself to grow in peace without the weight of being observed by those who saw you fall. Because there are things that only bloom when no one is watching, and you are one of them. So stop being present where you're no longer welcome. Be invisible to those who no longer matter. Let your absence be so firm, so total, so honest, that it leaves no room for doubt, and that when someone tries to find you in the same emotional place where they left you, they discover that you're no longer there, that you lost everything except yourself. 7. Grow where no one can see you. There are battles that are only won in silence. There are transformations that do not need witnesses, and there are processes that bloom better away from the gaze of those who never knew your worth. Therefore, after an unbalanced relationship, you don't need to prove to anyone that you're growing. You just need to grow. But do it where no one can see you, where they can't interrupt you, where your evolution is so intimate, so yours, that it doesn't depend on any applause. Growing where no one can see you is choosing an internal space where your energy is not contaminated by external validation. It's taking distance from the noise, from judgment, from questions, from opinions that don't contribute. It's becoming your own refuge, your own guide, your own impulse. It's not hiding, it's protecting yourself. Because when you're in the process of reconstruction, any wrong look can stop you. And you can't afford to stop for someone who no longer matters. This type of growth is not published. It's not measured in smiling photos or motivational phrases. It's measured in decisions that don't need to be explained, in boundaries you no longer negotiate, in thoughts that no longer dominate you, in wounds that no longer bleed. It's silent, but deep, invisible, but real. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They didn't seek recognition, they sought virtue, they sought consistency. They believed in the inner strength that doesn't need to be seen because it knows its worth. Marcus Aurelius said it clearly, do the right thing, even if no one is watching. That's the principle, not to grow so that it's noticed. Grow because you need it. From a psychological perspective, this also has a powerful meaning. When you stop seeking external approval, you start to develop stronger self-efficacy. You trust more in your decisions. You validate yourself from within. And when that happens, you no longer need to project yourself as an improved version to silence anyone. Your growth becomes authentic. It's not a reaction, it's transformation. Growing where no one can see you also means not sharing everything. Keeping things to yourself, reserving achievements, protecting your evolution, not because there's something to hide, but because you're no longer seeking to be understood by those who didn't respect you. Because you no longer need someone to see your shine for it to be real. Because your power no longer feeds on the eye of others, but on your own discipline. This doesn't mean you should live in isolation. It means you learn to choose who you share your process with, that you no longer let anyone in, that you understand that not all people deserve access to your new version. Because there are those who, if they could, would extinguish your light just because they can't bear to see it shine without them. And growing in silence also has a unique beauty. It's the peace of not being accountable. It's the rest from not performing for anyone. It's the freedom to make mistakes without feeling observed. It's the calm of knowing that you're rebuilding in peace, without pressure, without spectacle. So do it. Grow where no one can see you, where no one interrupts you, where you don't have to defend yourself. Let your next step make no noise, but leave a mark so that when the world looks at you again, it doesn't know how or when you achieved it, but it can't ignore that you're not the same person. Because this time, the change wasn't for someone to see. It was for you to never lose yourself again. 8. Erase your tracks with style. There are fires that can't be extinguished with water. They are extinguished by walking away. Like when a forest is ablaze and instead of going back to put out the fire with your bare hands, you choose to walk towards another horizon, leaving the ashes behind. But here's the detail. As you walk away, you can't keep leaving tracks that others can follow, because if the fire didn't completely consume you, it will try again. And if your trail remains visible, sooner or later, they will come looking for you again. So, if you're going to leave, do it for real. Erase your tracks, but do it with style. After an unbalanced relationship, many people leave, but they leave crumbs. Photographs that are still public, indirect posts, shared contacts, edited memories but still present. And even though they think they have moved away, they are actually still available, like a door left ajar. That's not leaving. That's making room for the past to return whenever it wants. And what you deserve now is not another visit. It's a complete reconstruction. Erasing your tracks doesn't mean denying what you've lived. It means that it no longer has power over you. The memory exists, yes, but it doesn't govern your behavior. It doesn't decide your emotions. It doesn't mark your days. And to achieve that, you have to let go of everything that keeps you anchored to an identity that no longer represents you. From the Stoic philosophy, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do every act as if it were the last of your life." And that applies here. If you're going to close a cycle, close it firmly. Stop maintaining connections that don't contribute. Stop checking profiles. Stop allowing nostalgia to push you to peek into the life of someone who is no longer part of yours. Psychologically, this process is called emotional feedback cut. It's the conscious act of closing all channels that reactivate your past links. It's a way to protect yourself from self-deception, from that part of you that, in moments of weakness, begins to romanticize what actually hurt. But this is where style comes in. It's not about running away or doing it with anger. It's about taking control of your narrative. When you decide to erase your tracks, you do it from calmness, from clarity. Not because you want to disappear, but because you're building a version of yourself that no longer needs to keep explaining to the world why it left. Your silence speaks, your distance communicates, your absence also has presence. Doing it with style is not falling into dramas or final scenes. You don't need to shout that you're leaving, just leave. You don't need to make public statements, just move on. You don't need to prove anything, just transform yourself. Because in the end, the tracks you leave should be yours, not traces of an open wound. Practically, erasing your tracks also involves redefining your environment. Eliminate what no longer vibes with you. Change your routine. Redirect your attention. Rebuild your spaces. Don't look back to see if someone is following you. If someone truly valued your presence, they would have already shown that they deserved to stay in it. And if they didn't, your path no longer belongs to them. This is not an act of coldness. It's an act of personal respect. It's no longer about what they did to you. It's about what you decide to do with it. You can stay waiting for emotional justice, or you can decide that you don't need anyone to recognize your pain to start healing. So erase your tracks. But do it with elegance, with firmness, with intention, so that when someone tries to find you again, they find no trace of the version that once tolerated the intolerable. Let all that remains of you be the new you are creating. And let that transformation not be explained, not justified, not shared, simply imposed. Thank you for staying until the end of the video. If you watched the whole thing, comment "I am Stoic" as our secret signal to know that you're a true student of Stoicism. Don't forget to subscribe and give the video a like if you enjoyed it. See you in the next video, and remember, keep cultivating your Stoic mind.